Welcome to another theme and video tutorial. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to override the default navigation. And this is in particular useful if, for example, you want to build a landing page where you use a different type of navigation and a different styled header. So I have my sample page set up here. This is my main navigation. But for my landing page, I'd like a full screen hero with a menu that's overlaying the hero. So this means we got to change a few things, namely the top header logo, background color, link color, and position. So I have my landing page that I've created here, and I'm just going to go ahead and add a hero very quickly, add a background image, and overlay a little bit of text. So I'm just going to do that. There we go, so I've created my hero. It's very simple. Again, I'm not going to build out the entire landing page. I'm just going to add the hero for illustrative purposes relating to the navigation. So once I've done that, I'm going to scroll down here to custom options for page. I'm going to go ahead and click navigation menu, and then I'm going to go ahead and check change navigation appearance for this page. When I do this, I get a range of different options, basically the same ones that we find in the customizer, and this is so that you can override the defaults. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to leave the logo to use customizer settings. This is so that it pulls the normal logo that we use for the body header, and then I'm going to go ahead and override the top. Now I'm going to apply a lighter version of my logo because, again, like I mentioned before, it's going to overlay our hero. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the header position to absolute. Actually, I was going to set it to fixed, but since I'm going to go through the header thresholds, this will serve as a good example. So if you remember, the default header is set to position relative, which means it's positioned above the content. I'm going to leave it to absolute, which means that it's positioned over the content, but it scrolls with the content. For the position on mobile, I'm going to leave that to fixed. Again, I want my header to remain at the top of the page, so I'm going to leave the vertical alignment to top, which means I don't need to modify the bottom value. If your landing page navigation has a submenu, you might want to set the header submenu indicator to show. This adds a little arrow next to the link that has the sub navigation, just to show that there's something there. And then we have the thresholds, and these thresholds govern such things as header height, when it should be compacted, when it should receive a background color, and when it should become sticky. So for the header height threshold, I'm going to set that to 100 pixels. For the background color, also 100 pixels, and the same for the compact threshold. So basically what this means is that once we've scrolled 100 pixels down the page, it will change the header height, it will become compact, and it will receive a background color. The next threshold determines when the header should become sticky. So I want it to become sticky at around 300 pixels. And then the last threshold determines when the header should slide back out again as we scroll up the page. I'm going to set this to 500. Again, I suggest you go through these thresholds and play around with them to get the right feel for your header. I'm just going to select what I commonly use. The next thing you can choose is the header navigation type. I'm going to leave it to default, but you can choose default, hamburger, to hide it, or to set it to a hybrid between default and hamburger. Then we have the navigation alignment. I'm going to keep it to the right. I don't have a second navigation to add, so I'm not going to modify the alignment. The header width, I'm going to stick to fixed width. And then we can choose our menu here. So it defaults to the main navigation, so the one that we saw on my sample page here. But I've already created a navigation for my landing page, so I'm going to go ahead and select that here. Now, if you don't know how to create menus, please watch our tutorials on that because I'm not going to go through that in this tutorial. Then we have the overlay navigation. So by default, it always sets to the main navigation of the site. But of course, you can choose the landing page or any other menu that you have created here as well. Now, I'm not going to use the overlay navigation. Instead, I'm going to use the off-canvas navigation. So I'm going to scroll down to it here. And I'm going to set this to landing page menu as well. Now, if I don't want to use the off-canvas navigation and I want it to default to overlay navigation, I just set this to none and it will automatically use the overlay navigation for mobile or for the hybrid menu. So I'm going to set this to landing page menu. Then we can determine the width of it as well. I'm going to set this to 50%. I think it's a little bit fancier. We can choose the alignment. Here again, I'm going to leave the default. And then let's see here, off-canvas menu title. I'm going to hide it. And then I'm going to change the off-canvas navigation animation here. I'm going to set that to push in. Now again, all of these options have a lot of different settings, so I suggest you go through and play around with them. Now the last thing I'm going to do is to change the default navigation colors, since we have the navigation overlaying in our hero. So I'm going to go ahead and select override for this page, and then I'm going to go ahead and select the top header navigation color here. So I'm going to set that to, let's say, 60.6 opacity, and then I'm just going to set the hover color and the active color here. And let's see, then we might also want to set the body background color so that it turns white as we scroll. Of course, you have all the button colors and stuff like that here. Again, go through them, work with them, and get a feel for it. So let's see here. I'm going to change the body header background color to white. And I'm going to set the top header border color to transparent. Now, a word of advice here, if you don't set colors and you leave them to blank, remember it will pull the defaults from customiser. And the last few things I'm going to do here, I'm going to apply a shadow to the body header. So I'm pretty pleased with that. I haven't modified that much, so I'm going for a very simple navigation here. Now the last thing I'm going to do, since I added the hero, is just to hide the masthead for this page here. And then we can have a look and see what this looks like. So here we go, I've created my custom top header navigation here. Now that I scroll, we can see the thresholds kick in and the header becomes compact. It pulls on the smaller logo that was set in customizer, and I have my default navigation colors pulled in for the body header. Scroll back up again and the top header appears. Now if we resize the browser here a little bit, we can see that the hamburger menu pops in and we have our fancy off-canvas navigation. And that is how you override the default theme menu for a particular page.